a quick little mini lecture here that's going to wrap up some of our work with our resumes and then move on to writing the second component to your application materials, which is the cover letter. So I'm going to do a little screen grab here that shows you a cover letter I have written in the past as an example of what yours may look like. I'm also going to show you another example that will provide you with a bit of a shorter um, sort of example that you can use to craft your own. What I'm really looking for here is to provide you with a bit of language that will help you get going on your cover letter, because the cover letter is a very challenging kind of writing to tackle, particularly early in the semester. However, it's important that we manage these two documents, the resume and the cover letter, early, because much of the writing that's going to happen in the semester after these documents really has to do with the kind of techniques that you're dealing with a resume and a cover letter, whether it's being persuasive in a technical document or really thinking hard about organization, formatting, clarity, and continuity. Okay, and being able to write consistently in different formats. Okay, and so part of our conversation for the class has to do with making sense out of these documents that we hear about and experience on a daily basis, but really getting into the nuts and bolts of what it looks like to craft one of these and how the styles and genres of writing in this kind of craft really are going to help guide our conversation and our work for the semester. So I'll just say a few quick words about what I noticed in your resumes. And overall, I was very impressed with how you were able to demonstrate your skills and experiences and your background. A few comments I have for many of you have to do primarily with being consistent. And so, one thing that you really want to make sure you're doing with both your resume and your cover letter is being consistent. And I mean consistency not only in terms of the style and size of your font, but also the way that you actually format the document. So you'll see very often that I will ask you to use the same header that you would use that you're using in your resume in your cover letter. So for example, if I put this header up here in my resume, I'm going to put the exact same header in my cover letter so that the hiring committee that ends up reading or looking over your application materials will be able to pair them up very quickly. There won't be any doubt as to whose yours is. And you can see my name is relatively big here. That's fine. That's good. You want your name to stand out in that way. Okay. So, and something else I mean by consistency is making sure that if you use a header in your resume, that you use that same style header throughout. So let's say you have a work experiences header, and that header is 14 font, it's bold, all the letters are capitalized. That should be the exact same for your education section. It should be the same for your skills section. It should be the same for your volunteer experience section. So just make sure that you're being extremely consistent when you're working on these kinds of materials, because consistency matters, particularly when it comes to technical writing. You want to make sure that you are always being consistent throughout the document that you're working on so that your audience knows exactly what is expected of them or exactly what they need to know from the piece of writing that you've given them. Okay, so those two things, making sure you're being consistent, or just one thing so far, the consistency of your formatting, and then I also want to talk a little bit about the bullet points. So resumes tend to utilize bullet point lists to convey information, particularly when it comes to what you actually done at a particular job or what you have done in a volunteering role. And so I want you to really spend time with your bullet points. So I always like to aim for having a few bullet points that really kind of relay to your reader that you have some serious reflection on the kind of work that you have done in the past, and that you know what you learned from the different work and professional experiences that you have been able to practice or take advantage of, and that you can represent that information in a way that is understandable and relevant to the job you're applying for. Okay, so I do want you to spend a little time with your bullet points if you haven't already. If you have no bullet points that explain what you've done at a particular work experience, then you need to add some. If you do and they are short, or if they are not detailed enough, I may have commented on that, then spend a little bit of time for the final draft thinking about how you can make those more robust. All right. So I'll move on to cover letters now, and of course you can send me any questions as you work on the final draft of your resume, should you have any. Please do. Okay, let's transition here a little bit. So I'm looking at a cover letter that I wrote as an example for this course, and it's one that what I did is I went out and found a job ad that I thought I would be interested in. It's an administrative assistant position at this luthier in Lewiston, Maine, and I wrote a cover letter that I would be happy to submit to this job posting should I should I like to, or if I ever wanted to submit something like this. And I'm going to post this so you have an example of what a cover letter sort of does and what it looks like. And I will also post another example, this student example of a cover letter that's, you guys, you can see, a bit shorter, but also formatted very much the same as this one I have here. So these will both be at your discretion to use. So you can see that I've formatted this in a pretty clean way, and I will do this. I have done this for my resume as well. I want to make sure that I include the mailing address to the company or organization that I'm submitting this to, just as a formality. I went ahead and found out who would actually be receiving this information, this application, should I send one. His name is Chris. And I know that it's very likely that many people on the team at this luthier would be reading my resume or cover letter, so I've gone ahead and said, Dear Chris and the Bourgeois team, because I want to make sure that I'm adding a personal salutation. And you should do the same. If you can't figure out who your cover letter is going to, you should try. You can send messages to the Human Resources Department. I mean, don't pester them or go overboard, but you can send a polite email asking, may I ask who will be reviewing the application materials so that I can address it to them. That's a very polite and very congenial and professional way to um, introduce yourself in many ways. But if you're not able to find out any information, you can always feel free to say something like, Dear Hiring Manager or Dear Hiring Committee. Those are really professional ways to salute or to write a salutation for your potential reader and audience, and in many ways works way better than To Whom It May Concern. To Whom It May Concern it always seems so snarky and sideways to me, only because it is not only overly formal, but also a bit rude because you didn't really do the legwork to figure out who you're going to send this to. So do stick with a dear salutation, dear specific person, dear hiring manager, dear hiring committee, whomever you may find is actually going to read this document. If you can figure out who it is, that's best. The next step is to figure out how you're going to open this letter. And in many ways, this is the most challenging part of a cover letter, is figuring out how you're going to start. I sort of have figured out over time that I like the way this wording sounds. Please accept this letter and enclosed resume as an enthusiastic application for the part-time administrative assistant position at Bourgeois Guitar. So you can mix this up. You can cut and paste different organizations, different positions, but this is a positive introduction that you are demonstrating an actual interest in, showing that you are enthusiastic instead of just saying, please find my application and resume enclosed, which, while still professional, is not as polite as it could be. Then, as you can see, my second sentence, and there's only 2 sentences in my opening paragraph, just sort of briefly highlights what I'm going to talk about in the rest of the cover letter. My experience as an executive and development assistant, my passion for the acoustic guitar in this case, both in performance and craft, prepare me to be an excellent fit for the tight-knit team at Bourgeois Guitar. So I'm just going to briefly introduce what my reader can anticipate me to talk about in my cover letter. And so then I jump in. I talk about my background working with the nonprofit that I worked for in Buffalo, New York, before I moved back home to Maine. And then I go into some more what are called soft skills. Uh, you will tend to see skills and expertise is broken down into hard and soft skills. Hard skills are like your ability to take apart a computer or your ability to frame a house. Really practical skills that apply to actual objects and mechanical artifices in the world. It might be your ability to use Microsoft Office. It might be your ability to work different kinds of printers in an office setting. Whereas soft skills are your ability to communicate with your team members, your sense of organization, your foresight, your ability to adjust to different situations. These are personal attributes of your character and of your working personal and professional lives that in many ways determine how well you will work in a particular kind of setting. So I always recommend that you talk about some kind of soft skill that you think you really have a good handle of. One, for mine, I always think of communication. I think that I am able to talk about this in a way in my background and in my experience, that sort of sells it a little bit to a potential employer. So I recommend that you include a paragraph that talks about some of your hard skills, your actual background, work, and labor in the jobs that you've had. A paragraph that talks about your soft skills and why those soft skills will be relevant to the job you're applying for. And then normally I would say that you can close with this with a sentence or two like I have down here. I look forward to the prospect of joining the Bourgeois team and bringing my commitment to the first-class customer service, etc., etc., etc. Thank you for your careful consideration. Again, a kind of boilerplate language that can go a long way because it lets your reader know that you appreciate having that they have read your entire letter and actually look forward to hearing from them. Now you will see I have put this extra little paragraph in here, and this is sort of like the potentially mystery paragraph of your cover letter. It's a paragraph that you may decide to include, but one that you may not. It's a paragraph that says something personal about you, about your character, about why you personally are applying to this job and why you think you will be a good fit. I cannot emphasize how important FIT is for employers. They want to hire somebody who's going to fit into the atmosphere of the workplace. They don't want someone who's going to make waves generally. They don't want someone who is not going to feel comfortable there. They want someone who's going to really fit in with the atmosphere and the colleagues who are already there. So, the more clearly you can demonstrate that you are a good fit for an organization or a company through your cover letter, the more likely you are to stay at the top of the application pile. So part of that is your ability to say, listen, I'm really good at these skills. I've done them before, and I know what I'm going to do. I know that I have the abilities uh, to bring to this business for this job that I'm applying for, and I understand how my experiences in the past match up with these expectations. I also know that I have a good set of soft skills that will help me fit into the workplace that I'm applying to. And then something personal. You may decide to include something personal, but you may also say, listen, I don't need to include that. I feel comfortable with my other aspects in my cover letter. And you may move on to this final sort of closing paragraph here. But if you have something that speaks directly to the job you're applying for, that you hold personally true or that you care about personally, go ahead and give it a shot. Include it in the cover letter for the first draft. See how it sounds, okay? And as you can see, mine is still only a page long. I haven't even gone to the bottom of the page. I still have a little bit of space down here if I wanted to. But a cover letter, as is a resume, should only be 1 page long. You can see I've simply put sincerely my name with my middle initial. And when I actually go to submit this, I'm going to sign it before I send it. I'm going to put a personal, actual signature in this so that the people who receive it will see my signature and know that I'm a serious applicant for this job. I cannot emphasize more how important it is to sign your application documents. It can go a long way, all right? It's a very simple gesture that really can have an impact, can leave an impact on a hiring committee and could make you stand out. If it's between you and another candidate, the personalization of your letter and of your materials will make you stand out. I guarantee it. So, that being said, I'm just going to summarize a few quick points here, and I'm also going to let you sort of take a look at this as well. I'll post this on Blackboard. This is another example, and in many ways does the kind of thing that I'm doing here. It talks about, this young lady talks about her abilities to take the actual skills, hard skills she's learned in her previous positions and bring them to bear on this job she's applying for. And she's also, subtly referring to the fact that she thinks she's going to be a good fit for this job, okay? I want to emphasize just a few final things, and we'll just, in summary, say this. So I want you to think about the cover letter as your opportunity to demonstrate something about yourself and your background to the hiring committee that sets you apart. That is the job of the cover letter, to keep your application in the running and out of the trash. The resume is that first quick glance. They're going to take a look at that, and they're going to decide if you're actually a good fit for the job itself. If they say yes, your cover letter will be read. If they say no, well, you probably weren't a good fit in the first place. However, if your cover letter gets to that second and third and fourth round of interviews or of consideration, you want your cover letter to really speak to the expectations of the job. And so it's your responsibility to take your previous experiences, your work experience, your education, your volunteer experience, your certifications, and explain in a few paragraphs why you are the best fit because of your background and expertise and because of something personal about yourself that really sets your character apart and lets your potential employer know that you're going to be a good fit for this job and for this company. Okay? I look forward to reading your cover letters. As always, if you have any questions, please send them along to me. I will provide comments on your cover letters just as I did for your resumes before you submit a final draft, and I look forward to reading them. See you, folks.